15 people who are working together on this Quincy Together initiative, a charge by the board to say, go out to the community, engage them. We've got 6 sessions happening monthly. Has anybody happened to been to any of them at the high school yet? One's at 5:30 tomorrow night, so feel free to join us. We're actually going to get into finances, which Ryan will talk to you a little bit about. But we'll give you a little overview of what's been happening with the process. These are the same slides we've shared with the community. So again, all of us are just volunteers. We're bringing people from the community together. We've had a heavy representation from parents, people associated with the schools. Last session, we started to see a broader spectrum in the community. We'd like to see that continue. So it's really helping to shape a long-term vision for our schools. I've called it kind of you are here on the map. So where are we today? Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? So we want to explore what our schools need. We've had members of the QPS central staff make presentations to talk about curriculum, hiring, facilities, give an overview of where we are. And then really lead a transparent process to identify what the challenges are and what the priorities are as we move forward. So each session has been presentation from the QPS staff, discussion at your table groups with the community, and then feedback to us, which we then distill and then build into the next month's presentation. So what is the goal for people in the community? Share their input, learn together, understand what not only their perspective on needs are, but what other people around the table are seeing as needs, collaborate on solutions, explore possibilities, and then again, help prioritize to ultimately make a recommendation back to the board that says, here's what we think, here's what the community wants to do for our schools in Quincy.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you all for your time this evening. So if you don't know my story, I'm from Quincy, Illinois. I graduated from QHS in 2001, and I convinced my wife, Carolyn, who's in the crowd here this evening, to move back here almost 4 years ago so we could raise our children. So we have twins that are 5, and next year they're going to be at Denman. But if I'm going to be frank, I was given some of the behind the scenes when I was asked to participate in this organization, and it's been alarming, right? Because I was under what I'm discovering is a misconception that the school district was in the same health that it was in when I left. And 2 decades later, like, there's some big challenges. And so that's what we've been doing, is bringing those to light with the community. So tomorrow will be our 3rd workshop. Workshop number 1 was focused on some of those challenges, and that included staffing, recruitment and retention, unfunded academic needs, and deferred facility maintenance. So staffing, it's a key critical component of the school district, right? I don't know if you're aware, but it's the 3rd largest employer in the city, Quincy Public Schools, with just under 1,000. At this point, we've already had 9 mid-year resignations. A lot of those are teachers. Last year in total, there were 8. And just based on some sidebar conversations that I have with folks that are in my sphere of influence, I know that there's more coming down the road. When we look at recruitment, some of the handout information that you have in front of you speaks to the starting salary. So on that documentation, thanks to Dr. Lee, who put that together. If you're not familiar with who Dr. Lee is, he was the intern superintendent 3 different times here in Quincy, and so his heart certainly has a place here. But we raised it to just over 40 grand because of a state mandate, right? But it's still the lowest starting salary out of any large unit school district in the state of Illinois. So you can imagine that's tough to be able to entice someone to come work for us, right? And then you could also see what it would look like after 20 years, in particular in comparison to other districts that me as a baseball coach for the high school, Western Big Six schools is what we like to compare apples to apples with. We also know that Quincy has a large art following. Are you aware that there's no K through third grade funding for art programs anymore in our school? That's off the table. And then facility, like Quincy Junior High is a beautiful building, but it's also very, very old. And the reality is the new schools that were built, they're now 7 years old. And me as a real estate agent, we're told not to reference anything as new after 5 years. So please keep that in mind. Workshop number 2, we talked about like the ins and outs of what it takes to run a school. from transportation, food service, tech, security, maintenance, curriculum, and instruction. What we gathered from the public audience that was there is like, we need to get focused on the finance piece. So tomorrow night at 5:30 at the Quincy High School cafeteria, Ryan Wicker, who's the Chief Business Operations Officer, he's gonna show what it takes, like how the money comes in and where it goes out. And if you're not aware, in 2019, there was very drastic budget cuts that were forthcoming. And so that was gonna be teachers getting laid off and additional programs cut. COVID then happened, and that provided an influx of federal stimulus money. They've been very good stewards of that, and conservative with the spend, but the reality is that was short term, right? It's not a long-term solution. And we don't want to see our community be in a position similar to East St. Louis, where we might be taken over by the Illinois School Board, right? And that is something that is on the table if we don't make changes. Where we're at with the tax ed fund rate has been set in place since the Reagan administration, right? So that's a long time ago, right? So how can we expect to have the performance of a 2024 or even 2022 Tesla when we're driving around a 1988 Cutlass Supreme? That's the reality, right? My former geometry teachers in the audience, there's kids now at school that are having to take geometry online. They don't have a teacher that they can go up and ask questions with. And I know that's not a recipe for success either. So that's some of the feedback, retention, pay. We need stronger recruitment strategies. How do we improve our facilities? Community partnerships. So our ask of you tonight is to please spread the word within your wards about these workshops. We've had between 100 and 150 folks show up each night. We provide childcare, we provide food, but this is very much a Quincy Together scenario, right? Not just for those that have a student that's in the district. It impacts my grandfather who's 91 and his property value, right? And the safety of his community and the future prospects of what Quincy will look like. So you can see our schedule. We're coming up on the third session. We'll have 2 more after that. And then ultimately what we're going to do is take that feedback from the community and we're going to provide recommendations to the board that they'll consider in June for future action. Any questions on that? This is our social media. You can find us at quincytogether.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and you do have cards that you can scan that will show you a rundown and synopsis, like summaries of the past workshops. And we're going to continue to post that information so everything's public and transparent.
Yep, that QR code takes you right to the Quincy Together site. That's on the QPS site, shows you, as Ryan said, everything we've been working on, everything we've gotten back as feedback. I just want to reiterate, tomorrow's session was not going to be on finance. The community said, we really want to understand the finances. That's ultimately what this is going to come down to, and that is what this is going to come down to, no question. So it's really making sure you understand that gap and what the options are to close it.
7 minutes, dude. Right on time.
Did we nail it?
Any
All right.
questions for these guys or for Dr. Lee?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
A lot of the things that we hear in our communities is that Quincy Public Schools get almost 60% of the tax dollar. How do you address that when people say enough's enough and it's too much, and then the things you're talking about make total sense? I mean, we fight that battle all the time talking to people. My taxes are too high, school gets too much money.
My quick answer is invite them to come, because it's not a one-liner answer. It's kind of understanding what's happening with the schools, where the money's going. I'm not from Quincy originally. My wife is, but we lived in a community that had one of the best school districts in the state. And I'll tell you, the value of my house was 2.5 times what it was when we moved back to Quincy.
Let me ask you a question. Communities this size, I think Quincy's 56% for schools, is that right?
You mean the property tax?
Yeah.
bill? Yeah, I'd say. around
Okay, something around there. Is
Of the
other
total budget.
communities about the same?
Yeah. The like communities.
Okay, so we're not way up, we're not way down, we're kind of just where everybody else is.
Yeah, and we're doing comparisons with Galesburg, with Jacksonville, Moline, Rock Island.
Okay,
That's what we would consider. We're not going up to Chicagoland or looking at the St. Louis metro areas.
Yeah,
you
I'm
also-
not sophisticated enough on all the finances to speak to him. Ryan Wicker, the operations person, can and will tomorrow night. But we are the lowest of all the large districts in teacher salary, and we are the
understand
lowest
that.
tax fund rate, which, as Ryan shared, was set in 1988. So there is you can see it in the numbers tomorrow, but we're not in the middle of the pack. We're at the bottom of
okay.
the pack.
You talked about some of the cuts that you have. Do we still teach the trades, building trades, stuff like that? Because I was in that when I was in school 125 years ago.
Yeah, and so VOTEC, the VOTEC Center, what I found alarming, I believe it was opened in 1974, don't quote me on that, but it was in the,
That sounds right.
it was in the 70s. The welding equipment that's in there goes back to 1974. That's
I
what they're still working
graduated in
with.
'78.
Yeah.
And I know we were like the fourth class out of that new building.
Right. And my mother lives in Hannibal, Illinois, or Hannibal, Missouri, and when we moved back, she was trying to convince Carolyn and I, why don't you consider Hannibal? I said, no way. But are you all aware that Hannibal's building a $20 million innovation center that's gonna be their new VOTEC facility for their students, right? And me as a baseball guy, I go over there and I see their brand new turf fields, both baseball, softball, and soccer. I'm like, how does Hannibal have this and not Quincy?
Gotcha.
You know, it's painful.
Dr. Lee's lived the numbers. We haven't lived them like he has, so I think he's.
I would like to comment on the 56% of the pie. It's a smaller pie because of the tax rate. So basically, you're working with less money, but of that pie, in most districts, 84 to 85% of that pie goes to salaries. In Quincy, only 77% goes to it. So not only is it a smaller pie, but you're getting a smaller piece of the pie, and we're suffering as a result. So yeah, your bill is a higher percentage of, but it's because it's a smaller
That makes
number.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our voc department, we had one of the ladies on the Human Rights Board. She said she used to work for Caterpillar in the 90s. That equipment was better than what we have in our VOTEC. So we need to upgrade that as well.
I understand.
Thank you.
I have a question. How does the age demographic in Quincy, as far as teachers in Quincy, compare to other districts?
Age?
The
Yeah.
age of teachers.
Don't know that.
Yeah, we could get you that answer. and ask
Lisa Otten could
Lisa Otten.
help with that answer. That's the value of having these subject matter experts from the school district at these sessions, is there's an opportunity to submit questions, and then they'll either get answered at the session or on the website
So
afterwards.
Mike, you would like to see the age breakout of our teachers, and then it sounds like Greg, you would like to see how does Quincy's tax, right, like that overall budget spend compared to some others? Okay, that's good to know. I mean, the teacher profession is less attractive than what it was maybe 10 years ago, and there's various different variables that go into that. But know that we have between 50 and 60 open positions right now.
That was my question, actually, so,
Yeah.
You sort of just answered it.
Yeah.
But what is the biggest hurdle? Is it just the salary? Because Quincy's a fairly affordable town to live in, so I don't think it's just the salary. So what is the biggest hurdle to the staff?
Pay is one thing. I think also, like Dr. Moore, you know that we've talked about housing, right? And that was a big challenge for our previous superintendent. Like, I built a brand new home that was in Eric's ward, and it was listed at like $155,000. And the reality is, Dr. Pettit told me that a teacher couldn't afford that house, right? So having quality housing would certainly help. I think it all ties in. But then making our teachers feel valued and appreciated, and not putting discipline or instilling morals. Like, it's not our teacher's job to instill morals. That needs to start at home, right? And having someone go out and just say thank you to a teacher, I think, would go a long ways. Yes.
Question, you mentioned something about the VOTEC school back when he was in 1974. But a lot of the community county schools are no longer involved in the VOTEC program, so how does that affect you on the VOTEC program? But
I'm sorry.
Central, Minden,
Yeah.
they used to be part of that program, they're
We
not
still
in
get
that
kids from
anymore.
there. We still get kids from Notre Dame and from some of the other communities.
So Camp Point,
I'm not sure
Minden,
exactly, yeah, but we do.
they're not on that program anymore.
We still get, I'm not sure exactly where they come from, but we still get kids from
Okay.
Ozark.
Sorry, we can't answer those in detail, but again, but that's another, we have Kim at our sessions would be able to answer a question like that. And if you can have people come or come yourselves and submit those, we can get those. Those are the kinds of things, that's the purpose of this outreach, right? Is to get those kinds of questions from everybody in the community, distill it together, provide the facts, and then talk about what we want to do about it.
Yeah, there's Q&A cards, so they can write questions as they have the tables, and then that's given, and we answer them at a later date if we don't have it right there for you. So I'll make a note of that as well. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would
Thank you
say
for-
that anybody who thinks their property tax bill is too high needs to be at Quincy High School cafeteria tomorrow at 5:30. And if
Yeah.
you're not there, then we assume that you think property taxes are just fine. So
Thank you,
I
Dr.
hope they
Wall.
show up.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks for being here and thanks for enlightening us.
Muddy River News. Our home, our news.